may have been Camelot for Jack and Jacqueline.
Sredina 18. vijeka je doba koje i dalje uređuje naše shvatanje politike. Doba u kojem su stvarali Karl Marx i John Stuart Mill i dalje utiče na naše poimanje političkih zbivanja. Tada je Karl Marx rekao da bauk komunizma kruži Evropom. Danas, ako slušamo mainstream medije, vidjet ćemo da bauk populizma, kažu, kruži Evropom. To su partije koje nude borbu protiv štednje, borbu protiv migracijskih promjena, borbu protiv militarizacije, dolazak boljeg života, borbu protiv ekonomskog kolapsa. Nazvani su populistima zato što navodno obećavaju ono što ne mogu da ispune. Znam da je to jako šokantno i da političari nikad nisu obećavali ono što ne mogu da ispune, ali eto, tako kažu mainstream mediji. Na desnici znamo ko su ti ljudi. To je Nacionalni front u Francuskoj, AfD u Njemačkoj, alt-right i Donald Trump na neki način. Ko je to na ljevici? Ko su ti ljudi? Za početak priče o ljevici i desnici nalazimo u Francuskoj revoluciji. Tada pripadnici starog režima i kralja su se bazirali na desnoj strani parlamenta, dok su oni koji su bili progresivni, koji su željeli revoluciju i promjenu, su stali na lijevu stranu. Vremena su se mijenjala, političke situacije su se mijenjale, podjela je ostala. Vremenom, ovaj koncept iz Francuske je prešao u Evropu, pa je u čitav svijet. I tako smo shvatili da su ljevičari progresivci, oni za promjenu, a desničari su tradicionalisti, konzervativci, oni koji žele i dalje stari poredak. 100 godina je prošlo od oktobarske revolucije, najvažnijeg možda događaja po ljevičare, po ljevicu uopšte. A mišljenja su i dalje podijeljene, nemamo konsenzus u tome. Neki kažu da je ljevica dobro učinila, da je oktobarska revolucija dovela do emancipacije, do industrializacije, do pozitivnih promjena. Neki kažu da je samo Stalin mogao da pobjedi Hitlera, ali drugi kažu Mao Tse-tung je ubio više nevinih i od samog Hitlera. 100 godina je prošlo od kada su Lenin i boljševici zbacili prelaznu vladu Kerenskog i ljevica se u tom vremenu mijenjala. Nekada je išla ka, a nekada od marksističko-leninističkih principa. Jedno je sigurno, promijenila je razne oblike, od samoupravnog socijalizma do radikalnog boljševizma, socijaldemokratije, države blagostanja. Mnogi politički lideri su stradali zbog ideja socijalizma, ljudi kao što su Palmiro Togliatti, Patrice Lumumba i Salvador Allende, ali ljevica je u svakom slučaju u padu. Mnogo godina je bilo u padu koji je počeo prije svega 90. godina kada su centralno lijeve partije vođenje Blairom, Clintonom, Schroederom napravile korak ka desnici, ka neoliberalizmu da bi mogli da dobiju izbore. Ekonomska kriza je pokazala da je ovakav stav neodrživ i da ljevica mora da se vrati. Pitanje šta je ljevica je posebno interesantno u zemlji u kojoj prave ljevice nema. Kod nas, oni koji se nazivaju ljevičarima istovremeno se zalažu za militarizam i NATO pakt, dok oni koji se zalažu za desnicu nose majice Che Guevare, tako da moramo objasniti ovu konfuziju. Decembra 2016. godine sam imao prilike da u Berlinu prisustvujem kongresu evropske ljevice. Grupi partija koje kažu za sebe da su jedine istinski progresivne snage, da jedine baštine ideje ljevice i da žele da naprave promjenu u 21. vijeku. Imao sam prilike da vidim raznorazne partije, organizacije, grupe i aktiviste koji se zalažu za radnička prava, za ekologiju, za razoružanje, za ženska prava, za mnogo štošta. U periodu kada se partije centra, zvao se on desni ili lijevi, počinju da bivaju maltene jednake, da sraste u nešto što se naziva centralna birokratija, pitanje je šta je alternativa. Da li su to ovi ljudi? Šta oni misle? Šta žele? Zato i postavljamo prvo pitanje, šta je ljevica danas?
Looking to our history, the last century was a century where the left lost some of their basics. Looking back to the developments in the so-called socialist states, the other parts of the left in Europe had to fight in capitalist countries against the system also. And now we see that one of our main problems is that the left is very, very differentiated. This could be in favor, it could be a good thing if we would like to use it, because diversity can be a good issue, can be an advantage for us. Because I think never the left in Europe should wait that sometimes Moscow again will lead see the left as it was in the 30s, 40s, 50s in the last century. These times are over, but this is also our problem, because the left, after the failure of the so-called socialist states, had never developed an own vision for Europe. And that's why parts of us are defending the national level as a main level for democracy, or to defend the rights of workers or of social rights. But another part is saying, okay, the capitalism is organized on European, on global level, and we have also to fight in European and global level. We have to bring it together, and that not to say we have to go back on the national issue. We have to bring it together, we have to fight together, and we have to face challenges, because the institution of the European Union is destroying itself because of lacks in the structure, because the structure of the European Union is only in the interest of the banks, of the monopoles and so on, and not in the interest of the people. And we have to find the right way to bring back the European Union to the vision why people after World War II were saying never. We should allow that German nationalists or Austrian nationalists or other nationalists in Europe should begin the war. We should bring together the people, but that means we need solidarity, and we have to accept our diversity between our members in Europe, but also between the left in Europe. We have to accept that we are diverse.
The good news is that the left wing is growing in Europe. The left wing has grown tremendously. You see the breakthrough of Podemos, the rise of Razem in Poland, the breakthrough of the left in Belgium for the moment. Die Linke is a lot stronger now than 10 years ago. And we see the new left in Slovenia. And there's a list of left-wing parties that have grown or just appeared. And they come from very different backgrounds. Some of them are old, some of them are new, some of them are reformed, some of them are alliances. But the interesting thing is that they find more and more common ground. And I think you will see this process going on for a couple of years. And you have to allow this process with respect of the national differences. And I think it's this true dialogue, learning, trying to formulate common action that is the way forward. But the good news is that the left is reinventing itself and it's growing.
Mi imamo dosta različnu levicu u Skandinaviji, u Španiji, u Srbiji, u Rusiji, u Bugarskoj, na primjer, i u Irskoj. I u svake države to će biti, na primjer, Francuske, to je pitanja gej brakova. To je pitanja feminizma, to je pitanja borbe protiv rasizma i tako dalje. A u Rusiji to je pitanja socijalističke pravednosti. I to je pitanja borbe za svoje prava svih ljudi koji svaki dan rade na svoje fabrike. I to je pitanja za običnog čoveka, truda koji...
U Njemačkoj je minimalna zarada.
To je pitanje zarade. U Španiji danas to je isto pitanja kako je moguće napraviti manje nezaposlenost. Zato što to je glavna problem za Španiju. Nezaposlenost naroda. I naravno negde to je slične pitanje, negde to je različne pitanje, ali svakako svuda to je ljevica.
U vrijeme kada se ljevica definisala, bilo da govorimo o dobu Francuske revolucije, oktobarske revolucije ili promjena širom svijeta nakon Drugog svjetskog rata, postojala je jasna podjela na klase. Bogati, siromašni, gradska aristokratija i seljaci. Postojala je jasna podjela gdje je radnička klasa, gdje su ljudi u fabrikama, poljoprivrednici. Tako je ljevica lako nalazila uporište. Svoji glasači i članovi su se nalazili među radničkom klasom ili takozvanim proletarijatom. Ljevičari su zato držali govore u fabrikama, pogonima, računali su na sav taj radnički svijet u svojim marševima i na izborima. Danas radnička klasa se promijenila, smanjio se njihov broj i broj radnika u poljoprivredi i u industriji je drastično pao. U Francuskoj od 69. godine je bilo 52% stanovništva, dok danas svega 22% radi. U Španiji 67% je bilo 69. godine, dok 2016. je svega 23%. U Italiji od 77. do danas je palo sa 55 na 30%. U Njemačkoj, koja je navodno vrlo uspješna zemlja, sa 46 na 29%, a u Rusiji za samo 20 godina je broj radničke klase smanjen sa 54% ukupnog radnog stanovništva na 33%. Tako da je prvi problem ljevice, gdje su njeni birači, gdje su njene interesne grupe, kome se obraća. Pored toga, tu su jakutna pitanja savremenog svijeta, kao što je migrantska kriza. Kako ljevica može definisati odgovor na nešto na čemu je Evropska unija pala, dok s druge strane znamo da desničari imaju svoj jednostavan i jasan odgovor. Nećemo migracije. Da li ljevica ima taj odgovor? Tu su još neka pitanja. Pitanje državnosti, autoritarnosti, kako protiv bauka prošlosti, kako protiv militarizma. Može li ljevica biti alternativa? Može li donijeti pozitivne promjene? Ili se samo radi o grupama koje ćemo glasati čisto iz bunta, čisto iz revolucije?
Social democracy sold out the interests of big majorities of the people. And the left, in its time, the radical left, was an alternative to protest people and to say, that's not good. You can look at Spain, at Greece, and Portugal, other countries, even Germany, who were the party against the establishment. But this was years ago. People see it doesn't change. They have experience in Greece that they have a government from the left, but the Troika and the European institutions are so hard that they can't do so much about it. So people see, okay, voting for the left is good, but it can't change the thing, so we try something else now.
So it's a protest vote mostly?
A lot of people, yes, and all the parties, also the radical left parties, most of them, not the Spanish one, not the Greek one, most of them lost contact to the popular classes. We are not there in the neighborhoods, we are not organizing everywhere things that people can be part of, and this will have to change again, to be back as a party not only for the parliaments, for the media, to be voted every 4 years, but back in the everyday life of the people, and that's what we're trying to do right now in Germany, but all across Europe, to invent a different form of a party that is close to the people.
I think it's a true challenge because some of the foundation of the strong trade unions has changed dramatically, but there is still a big working class. But maybe today the typical worker is a young woman with a temporary contract working in a store, or is someone who has a contract for a firm that only employs them from 1 week to the other, going from one work to another workplace. And that is maybe more difficult to organize, but that's simply our task to do that. And I think we have to also redefine our own image of the working class, what it is today.
There is a new, not very new already, definition as precariat, which a lot of experts and politicians use. In Georgia, for example, we do not have not middle class, not workers as a class. Maybe there are some people, but not as an electorate, not as class. We have precariat. These are people who does not work permanently. Maybe they used to work 1 month, then doesn't work 2 months, and who are under very big pressure of banks and financial institutions. I think for our party, these people, this precariat is main basis for next parliamentary elections.
When people talk about the class, people think about the old industrial class. That is history. Of course, we have, especially in Germany, a big fraction of industrial class still there, and they get very good income, let's say. But of course, the normal state of the class today is a very precarious one, very fragmented. You have a lot of more service work, not industrial work. You have a lot of more women and a lot of more migrants, although the class always was a migrant one too.
My personal position is that we should not fear, Europe must not fear migrants and refugees. Europe may benefit from the migrants and refugees. According to studies of the United Nations, Europe, because of its demographic crisis, because we have also a demographic crisis in Europe. Needs to renew its population is demography. Therefore, as you know, Russia, for example, which is a big country, loses the size of its population is being decreased over the last 20 years. So, of course, migrants and refugees not go to Russia, but I think Germany has learned the lesson. It's not by chance that Germany, in recent years, has accepted about 800,000 refugees. Therefore, refugees may be a capital, a very important capital for development of Europe and its member states. It's very, 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 very conservative view to say that the migrants and refugees will lose our national identity because of them. This is very false.
Look at the refugee crisis, which was a disaster the way it was handled by the European Union. We have a common interest of a dignified solution, helping people that are in dire conditions. If you look on workers' rights, we can see a lot of migrant workers coming from poorer countries to Germany, to Sweden, and they are often heavily exploited. They have bad wages, they have no union rights, they're often not paid, at all sometimes. When we fight for them to have Swedish wages, to have a union contract, we also fight for them lifting their living standards, coming back to the country of origin with a union card, saying that we have the rights as workers. That's my experience, not being exploited, but being organized. And this is, I think, a common interest against the bosses of Europe and against the right wing of Europe. And I think in that way, we are more intertwined today. We have more in common today than we used to have. Some issues like the trafficking, human trafficking, or like the climate issue it's just obviously international, and we have to cooperate.
Right wing, right extremist, nationalist. It seems that they are able to offer the people an alternative to the neoliberal EU, to the neoliberal system in their countries. It seems so. They have only black and white answers. And the left is trying to explain to people the whole system. But we have also to find some points, some key points, and to speak in a language that people understand. And we have to make clear that we have alternatives. And it's better to be closer to the people, work with them together, to stand on their side when they are defending their rights, and to encourage them to fight for their rights, not only to say, we know what is the best for you. We have to stand on their side. We have to stand in solidarity with them, and we have also to learn from the people. If we are doing this, we will be able to create another alternative, a democratic and social and solidarity alternative to that what the right wing, the right extremist nationalists are presenting now. This is the main thing we should do. We have to do more to overcome the fear. People fear that their future is not safe, that they will lose rights, that they will lose protection, that they will use the future for children and also for the next generations. And that we have to understand. The main thing is to overcome this fear and to encourage people to defend their rights, but in a democratic and solidarian way.
What can one leftist government do when all around are rightist government? And we say it's very well the situation around Greece when there is a leftist government, but all another governments of Europe were just as an enemy, and they tried somehow to press Cyprus and to discredit Cyprus government. Anyway, we see that he survived, his government survived, and it will be, I think, very important as a precedent for another country, because if it's possible leftist government to be successful in Greece, why not it can happen in Georgia or in Spain or in Italy?
Stvarni ljevičar, on je protivnik širenja NATO pakta, on protivnik NATO pakta u generalnom smislu, zato što NATO pakt to je pakt kapitalističkih zemalja protiv manjih, siromašnih drugih zemalja. I to je naša problem kako mi možemo napraviti novi život i obezbediti razvoj naše industrije, naše ekonomike i u Crnoj Gori, i u Rusiji, i u svakoj drugoj zemlji, kako mi možemo da izađemo iz ovoga siromašnog života i da živimo na dostojnom nivou, na dostojnom, kako se kaže, evropskim standardima, ali bez NATO pakta, bez svih ovih kapitalističkih zajebavanja.
We have to be very cautious about what's happening. We see Turkey sliding into dictatorship. We see a very authoritarian rule in Russia with the aggression against neighboring countries. We see a development in countries like Poland and Hungary, which is, I would say, semi-authoritarian. And we have to be very firm in solidarity, working, for example, with our Turkish comrades that are now in prison because they're left-wingers, to stand by the side of those Polish women demonstrating against the ban of abortion, for example. They need our support and we need their struggle. So that's also why it's so important that left coordinates. On the other hand, we can also see a lot of positive developments around the world, progressive policies, attempts to cut the dependency on the United States politically and militarily. So I think it's a very open and you could say compared to the Cold War, it's less predictable world.
Dobro smo se upoznali ko su ljevičari, koje su to partije, koji su to aktivisti, gdje oni stoje i zašto se zalažu. Ali ostalo je zapravo glavno pitanje, ono od kojeg smo počeli. Šta želi ljevica danas? Kakvom svijetu se nada? Kakvu alternativu želi da predstavi?
To limit oligarchic groups and to limit business group. Business groups should make business, but not intervene into politics. Right now, Georgian parliament, which is a 150-member parliament, more like on trade chamber than on the parliament, because most of members of parliament, they are millionaires. And I don't think that MPs should just buy seats. MPs should be elected based on their power, programs and their ideology. So I think that for Georgia right now it's priority number one to limit political influence of business corporations.
And austerity, because that's devastating for the whole of Europe and also for the big countries like Great Britain or Germany. In Germany we also experience austerity. Even people outside Germany don't know that maybe, but we have experienced a lot of social devastating reforms in the last 10-15 years, also done by Social Democratic and Green parties. We have the biggest precarious sector in Europe, as big as the US, not to forget that. Also some Eastern countries have this size, but bigger than Greece or Spain, for instance. And so that is a problem for all of us, and there we have to start and to invest again in social infrastructures, because people need them and they don't have it anymore, and you have to finance all that. And that means very simple things, to tax the rich again, and that's not a radical or socialist agenda, that's an old-fashioned social democratic agenda, if you want to like this. And there you can build upon. Of course, we need more diverse understanding of society, how it should work today, and you need more participatory possibilities for everyone, not only on every 4 years, but on the local level, every level, where people can decide what is part of their life in politics. And so this is beyond the old social democracy, let's say, but the first things would be very easy to do. And also for foreign policies too, and intervening in everywhere and export arms and things like that.
The great challenge which faces Irish people today is that of austerity. Austerity in the south of Ireland, imposed by the current coalition government in Dublin, but the austerity crisis which is being imposed on the people of the north of Ireland by the British government, because the north of Ireland continues to remain under constitutional jurisdiction of the British state. So Sinn Féin's programme is to challenge and fight against austerity in the south of Ireland and in the north of Ireland, even as a party of government, as well as taking forward the argument for national democracy and to bring about the circumstances through political and democratic persuasion of an agreed united Ireland in the future. And Brexit has created a moment in which a new conversation has begun in Ireland about the future and about the potential for creating new relationships on the island of Ireland by establishing a new constitutional and political model that would reflect an agreed united Ireland.
To close the gap between rich and poor people inside Germany, we have to defend the rights of workers for good working conditions, for minimal wages, which allow us to live in dignity. These are the main things, but we have also to defend the rights of the people for democracy. We are not only voting for parliamentarian democracy, we would like to extend it also to direct democracy, to give the people the right to decide themselves about important things they are concerned on local level, national level, and we are asking also for such a right on European level. And of course, one of the main things should be that the left should stop any kind of export of weapons in the world.
We want to be a contributor to the agenda of a Europe of solidarity, of global peace, of democracy and social transformation across Europe, and we want to play our role as a united Ireland in the future within the community, the international community, assisting in bringing about global solidarity and global peace.
In the DNA of the left is the struggle for peace. Therefore, our first priority is to contribute to defending peace in Europe and in our region and everywhere. And in this direction, we want dialogue for solving the international problems, of course. Every problem, we think, should be dealt with through dialogue. There is no... The threat and the use of force is unthinkable today. Therefore, we don't believe that security depends exclusively on military might or on police apparatuses. Security is a multidimensional concept. Security means social cohesion, social protection, environmental protection, and of course economic security, social security. Therefore, we are against new arms expenditures, and we are against the proposal for 2% increase in military spending, which was decided by NATO recently. We don't, especially for Greece, that is trying to recover from a deep and multi-dimensional crisis. It's unthinkable that we will spend more on for our defense.
Why should not democracy be brought to the economic field? I cannot understand why it should not be also when it comes to the big economic decisions. And I see the experience of the financial crisis is so clear that the EU saved the banks that let the people down. So, I mean...
should we look up to Iceland?
I think Iceland is one of the most interesting alternatives because they actually let the banks pay. They put the heads of the banks to trial. and they had the left-wing government. Actually, the finance minister of Iceland, Steingrímur Sigfússon, he's from the left party of Iceland. And I mean, they did the opposite to the EU. And they tried to save the low-income people, putting the tax burden on the richer. And now the Icelandic economy has recovered very fast, but it's also kept the equality of the society.
I kao što Jonas Jostad iz švedske ljevice zaključio, alternativne snage moraju da nude alternativna rješenja. Sa te strane, ljevica nema težak zadatak. Radite samo suprotno od onoga što radi centralne partije, bilo da su desne ili lijeve. Ipak, njihov zadatak je težak. Treba spojiti sve te različite strukture ljudi i organizacija kojima je nekima preokupacija minimalna plata, nekima razoružanje, nekima ženska prava, nekima migranti, a nekima ideologija. To je zaista teško. Same, ipak, sve ove grupe predstavljaju tek statističku grešku pri čitanju izbornog rezultata, a ujedinjene mogu zaista i da zauzmu vlast. Nesumnjivo, povratak ljevice je izrazito bitan, zato što kada je ljevica se povlačila 90-ih, tako su se povlačila socijalna prava, tako se ukidala minimalna zarada i druge stvari. Povećavao se jaz između bogatih i siromašnih, a gomilali su se problemi koji su doveli do ekonomske krize. Da se tako nešto ne bi pojavilo, ljevica nam je potrebna, možda baš ova, crveno-zelena. Šetajući tih dana Berlinom, koji je bio ohićen i osvjetljen zbog božićnih praznika, primijetio sam da jedini spomenik koji nije osvjetljen je onaj Marksu i Engelsu. I uprko svim kontroverzama koje nose ova dva mislioca, to je zaista nepravda i na ljevici je da tu nepravdu ispravi. Početna teza iz ovog filma definitivno ne stoji. Ovo nisu nikakvi radikalni anarhisti i populisti koji obećavaju kule i gradove, a koji će da donesu vile i baklje, da spale kapital, da vješaju bogate i da unište ono što je sve do sad učinjeno. Njihova pitanja su jednostavna. Njihova zalaganja su jednostavna. Ako treba da se neko oporezuje, ajde da oporezujemo one koji imaju najviše. Ajde da podignemo minimalne zarade, oni koji imaju najmanje. Ako nemamo novca za svaku vrstu javne potrošnje, daj da smanjimo ono što nije bitno za običnog čovjeka, daj da smanjimo na militarizmu, na oglomaznu birokratiju. Oni žele da usmjere borbu za veća prava osnovnih jedinki svakog društva, to su radnici, to su porodice. Te ideje zaista nisu niti radikalne, niti populističke. To je samo zdrav razum.
Well, here comes the future and you can't run from it. If you've got a blacklist, I want to be on it. Waiting for the great leap forward. Well, it's a mighty long way down rock and roll from top of the pops to drawing a thou. And you're waiting for the great leap forward. If no one out there understands, just start your own revolution and cut out the middleman. For the great leap forward. In a perfect world we'll all sing in tune, but this is